if this gets to within, say, 6 points of the drop zone, fans themselves, never mind Ratcliffe, who isn't particularly popular at the moment, but fans themselves are going to say, wait a minute, is this guy the real deal?
Following his latest setback in North London, Ruben Amorim's side occupy 15th place in the Premier League. And there's a growing sign of discontent surfacing from subsections of support. We're touching on the Portuguese tactician and his philosophy, as well as the Glazers, Ineos, transfers, finances, and much, much more. It is your Theatre of Red. It has taken 21 fixtures as Manchester United head coach for subsections of a wounded supporter base to turn on Ruben Amorim, lamenting everything from his tactics to philosophy and apparent stubbornness to deviate from his ideals, with a growing contingent sharing their dissatisfaction with the Portuguese coach. Naturally, this will play hand in hand with public discontent regarding ownership and the future of this football club, while all the while the 1958 cultivates plans ahead of a protest before Arsenal in March. It is a very, very tough job, this football supporter malarkey. So with me today to chat about everything is a proud novelist and football correspondent for The Guardian and Observer, Mr. Jamie Jackson. It is great to welcome you to the Theatre of Red, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Shaun. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. All the better to be sharing some time with your fine self.
Right.
Jamie, Sunday's defeat to Spurs was the third against the Londoners this season. And that's the first time that has happened since 1989-90 campaign. And it's a second successive Premier League loss, which leaves the Reds in an almost unbelievable 15th position. Now, ahead of a trip to Everton in Saturday's early fixture, conversation about dissatisfaction that I've mentioned at the boardroom level has intensified. Although I am advised that while a sense of alarm regarding the magnitude of the decline exists, there is no intention of Amorim losing his job at present. When he arrived, there was this flawed idea that he was going to wave a magic wand and miraculously transform this side into a European contending outfit. This is the very same side that managed 8 goals in 9 league outings under Erik ten Hag before his departure. Presently, they've also managed to convert only 6 of 49 big chances, but they've also conceded 61. Now, the financial issues are another story, largely accountable for the lack of forward investment in January. But considering everything, Jamie, where do you stand on Manchester United under Ruben Amorim in the third week of February?
It's really interesting, all the sort of facts you present there. Some of them I was sort of unaware of. For example, the amount of chances conceded. I mean, it's ridiculous. Where do I stand? Right, I definitely agree with how you characterised it there, that, you know, the idea that he would come in and be a magician is, you know, unrealistic, silly. However, what I would say is I expected him to start the team to be better than this. So I'm not asking him to be a magician, but, you know, what's it, a goal difference of, I don't know, -7, maybe worse. Like you say, 15th, 12 points above the relegation zone. I think there were 4 or 5 outside the top 4 when Ten Hag was offed on October the 28th. So I expected them to be a lot better. Otherwise, what the heck was the point in changing the coach? You know, if you look at it from sort of Ratcliffe, not just Ratcliffe's point of view, you know, the club's point of view, but supporters' point of view, who kind of wanted Ten Hag out. So I am a little bit surprised. I get that there's issues, of course there are. And I tell you what, when you've got a club that's basically the way it is at the moment, with it's like north of £750 million debt, you know, there's going to be some more layoffs are going to sort of, I don't know, decimate or largely reduce the number of scouts. You know, people are unhappy there. The workforce morale is low. You've got all that before you actually get to this squad, this football team, you know, sort of being under par in terms of the quality. You're not going to get anything near to success. And that's why I actually thought Ten Hag did a good job, because a lot of those issues I just mentioned then, they're not just new this season. You know, it's always sort of coming down the track, a lot of this stuff. And he's had to deal with that and win 2 trophies. So Amorim, I think he needs to be better. Don't have to be much better, but I'll tell you what, it could be much worse unless he continues to sink, because this record is not great. I like the guy. Now, I'm not saying that as a way to sort of soften my criticism. Why I say that? Because I think to be likeable is actually an essential part of being a top manager. I think that he's got that going for him. Why I say that is I think the players have to like him, right? You know, you always get this thing where, oh, you know, you don't have to like me, but respect me. You know, if you're a manager or any person of authority, I don't quite agree with that. I think you have to sort of have some sort of connection with the person who's leading you. In this case, Ruben Amorim, the head coach of Manchester United. So I think he's got that going for him. What he's also got going for him is they don't give up in games. And I also do not buy that the players en masse, or not en masse, but a great proportion of them on a consistent basis go out and don't try. I hear this a lot. They don't run around. No, I just don't think they're good enough, right? And I do think they are trying. Listen, you'll get players in there who are disaffected, who might have an off day, and maybe subconsciously they'll put it in. But I just don't think they're good enough. That's not their fault. If you're Joshua Zirkzee, to give you an example, and United come knocking, you're like, wow, yes, please, sort of thing. It's not his fault. I could go through loads of players who sort of average, really. But to go back to Amorim, I think it's a misjudgment on his part that he's kind of folded to United when he said, I'd like to come in the summer. Because when he was saying to them, I'd like to come in the summer rather than mid-season, part of that, a great part would have been he wanted to stay with Sporting, Lisbon, obviously. But another part was, I think, he looked at the squad, how he wants to play, all the rest of it, the 3-4-3 we all know about, and thought, this is going to be very difficult, considering that team is listing anyway, wobbling. And he sort of went back on that stance, and I'm not sure what signals like that actually gave out to the players who would have picked up on that. So I don't know. On the one hand, it's complicated because there's a lot of issues. But on the other hand, the bottom line is he earns £10 million a year, I think it is, thick end of. He has to do better. He knows that. And I'm just surprised he didn't come in and say, you know what, people, I play 3-4-3. You know that. That's my guiding sort of formation or philosophy, how you want to characterize it. But believe you me, if I need to play 4 at the back, or if I need to do X, Y, and Z, I will do that. This sort of stance whereby it's a little bit like the gentleman at Southampton who got sacked. Forgot his name. Is it
Russell Martin, wasn't it?
Yeah, sorry, Russell Martin. Yeah, I'm going to say Russell Davies, but he's a playwright. Russell Martin. Now he sort of went down on his sword, saying, "I'm going to play out for the back." Blah blah. You got sacked, sir. Tomorrow doesn't come if you don't take care of today, which is sort of Amorim's ethos. Is look, it's going to hurt now. It's going to be worse in the long run if we don't do this now, this 3-4-3 thing. But in the long run, we will reap the benefits. You might do, Ruben, if you're still around to reap those benefits. Because if you're not, because basically you keep on tanking, yeah. Because at some point, if this gets to within, say, 6 points of the drop zone, fans themselves, never mind Ratcliffe, who isn't particularly popular at the moment, but fans themselves are going to say, wait a minute, is this guy the real deal? And whether that's fair or not, it's just the climate. I've seen so many managers go in there. Ten Hag was guilty of it. Others thinking they had more time than they did, and it ends for them. So I'm not calling for him to be sacked, but I'm just calling for him to maybe show us that he's streetwise. Mourinho's an easy reach to as an example, but he is very, very streetwise. Mourinho, take a little bit of his playbook. Just be cute about it a little bit. I mean, the other thing about all of this is Palace came to United, played a 3-4-3 under Glazer and sort of beat them. I think it's 2-0. Now you're not telling me that the players are a lot better. They might be better overall than United's squad. But what I'm getting to saying, Shaun, is if you're a top elite professional at a top elite club like United, that is still the record 20 times champions of England, you should be able to play a 3-4-3 or make it work. So, you're not getting beaten all the time or most of the time. So it's a lot of this is on the players as well. But what I'm getting to is I'm wondering whether, sort of Amorim's stance and the kind of the noise around the squad that, it's not ready for this system is playing into them. It's not the best sort of team talk or confidence boosters. He's coming out all the time and sort of saying, we're nervous at home. I mean, why does he say that more than once about Old Trafford? It's Old Trafford. It should be the way around. Go out there. Don't worry about nerves. Just play. I'll take care of it. You know what I mean? I just feel like the sort of the oratory in public has not been bullish or Ferguson-esque enough, or however, anyone else who's really sort of Klopp, whoever, pick a top manager. It's been a little bit sort of like, yeah, this is difficult, so we will try, but it might be next season. It's like, why not go the other way? You still, in the end, you've still got a game of football. Go out there and, I don't know, be more, I'm playing for Manchester United. Expletive that everyone else, I'm going to show you what I've got. Not, this is a 3-4-3, and the coach is constantly saying we need time. And I don't know, to me, it seems a little bit counterproductive.
I understand this. It is a perfectly valid debate and conversation to be had, particularly when you mention Erik Ten Hag, because Ten Hag came to the club with this absolutely fantastic, frivolous brand of football that he had at Ajax. he almost at points had 7 or 8 players in attack. And as so many people forget, because they like to rewrite history when things start going askew in Manchester, he was within about 60 seconds of a Champions League final with that Ajax side as well. But he came to Manchester United with his philosophy. And in fairness as well, this is sort of backing into Amorim's side. Ten Hag had a summer to work with the players and to try to get his ideas across to them. And then obviously we saw the opening 2 games of the season where United were brushed aside by Brighton and Brentford. Ten Hag immediately conformed to, I suppose, the capabilities of his squad and tried to really veer in on getting results as opposed to installing his philosophy. There has been so much made of Amorim's intentions to stand by his own philosophy for good or bad and to ride out this storm, if you will. I think inevitably this leads to this sense of disgruntlement in every nook and cranny. And this age-old line has now surfaced of it'll never work in the Premier League, or this sort of style only works on the continent. And maybe I'm getting senile, but these are elite footballers, Jamie. Is it really that much to ask them to shift about the pitch ever so slightly? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love tactics, Jamie. I love tactics, and I love nerding out on statistics and unnecessary analysis. But when I look at this squad, I do buy into what you're saying, that some of them simply are just not good enough. But I do believe when you hit that certain level as a professional footballer and you have made it to Manchester United, you've got a little something about you. You have something about you.
Yes.
And you've also mentioned Crystal Palace. There's some fantastic attacking players in that team, like Mateta, for example. I mean, realistically, on paper alone, you mentioned Joshua Zirkzee. Joshua Zirkzee won Serie A's best young player last year. And he was absolutely instrumental for Bologna to achieve Champions League football under Thiago Motta. So while I do appreciate the amount of scrutiny, I suppose, that's been put on Amorim for this stubbornness and a lack of pragmatism to deal with his squad, I also admire him that he's taking a stance that is, look, this is a formation that I want everybody to see that this can work. And the hierarchy above me know that this is what I want. This is what I've told them from day dot that I want to achieve. Whether or not it's going to work is irrelevant in my particular scenario, because it'll come a time whether it either does work or the hierarchy decide that they need another coach to come in and to be able to turn things around. What is your take on what has been labelled as his stubbornness?
No, I think you're right. I think it's good that he's prepared to sort of stick by them. But I just wonder whether the principles themselves are not the greatest. As in, why can't his principle be kind of what I said? I play a 3-4-3, but actually, fundamentally, I'm here to be pragmatic as a football coach, yeah? So I just think you should have that in your locker. Pep Guardiola played 5 at the back, I think in his first season predominantly. Obviously I cover City as well as United. He didn't mind going with wing backs. Why did he do that? That's supposedly the sign, if you play at 5 at the back, however you want to call it, of a sort of retro active approach. And this is Pep Guardiola. So he's got that in his locker. He's not stupid. He understands. And I think when you mentioned Ten Hag, when we talk about Ten Hag as well as Amorim, it might just be that both these coaches aren't good enough, and these players with the right coach, would do a lot better. Just because I'm saying that because you mentioned about Zirkzee, yes, young player of the year in Serie A. You don't get that, as you say, if you haven't got a bit of an X factor. It could just be that. I hear it a lot, and I understand why, because we've had loads of coaches and it's always the same players. Well, to a certain extent, not really, because there has been a turnover of players. For the Van Gaal squad, I think it's only Luke Shaw, maybe one other player who's still here. Even Mourinho's is kind of gone. There'll be a couple, maybe. There might not be any, I don't know, apart from Shaw again. So it isn't actually the same group of players all the time who've done it. So it might be, just because you've gone through 5-6 coaches, whatever it is, since Ferguson, doesn't necessarily mean it's players. Maybe, how long was it until they got a Ferguson after Busby? Yes. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just floating this as a potential thing, because I always think whenever you get an argument about something, a point of view, even if you don't agree with it, I think it's interesting to have a look at the opposite, just in case there's something there that hasn't been considered. So the stubbornness thing, listen, if let's say 19th of February next year, and you kindly ask me on again, and they've won the Europa League, and this season, and they're in the Champions League, they're still in the last 16. And wait a minute, Ruben Amorim's United are sort of 5th or 6th, and they're not going to win the title, but crumbs. You can see he's really, fair play. It'll be proven to be right, because what's at play here is we're living in real time. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, do it? Neither does he really. I mean, he's the expert, Amorim, but all we can judge on are what we've seen so far. And so far, I'm just a little bit surprised because the guy is bright. He's unbelievably intelligent. It just oozes out of him. And again, it's such an important thing. Wenger was a smart cookie. Ferguson, Mourinho, Guardiola, they're all really intelligent people, within themselves, never mind the sort of football brain. They're intuitive. And I just feel like this guy's got that. So maybe, he's only been going as a top level coach, I think, for 6 years. Is it 18? Sort of 7 years, maybe? It's not loads of time, right? Maybe what we're seeing here, or what we will see, is him learning on the job or developing a sort of an extra string to his bow, however you want to say it, just to be a little bit cuter. Because I do think at the moment, there's a stat, you're probably aware of it, Shaun, is about 2 weeks ago now, so it's probably got even worse, but on the Premier League website, the managers or the teams that have made the most in-game tweaks to formations, United were bottom. It was 2, in all his games, So, I can't remember who was at the top. So that's kind of backing up what I'm saying. Listen, I am not, an elite football coach, but I think we've all who watch football a lot understand that it's one of the beauties of it is everyone can actually have a valid view, because it's not that it's not like physics or abstract maths. You can look at it, and if you watch enough of it, you can become a bit of a sort of expert on it. And I think it's quite simple, really. I think there's some good players there. Ten Hag's won 2 trophies the last 2 seasons. I know there's been a slight turnover, and players like Casemiro have got older and all the rest of it. I get that. But they can't descend from sort of 3rd in his first season, 7th was it last year, to 15th and maybe worse. I mean, I don't know. So I go back to the coach because it's kind of his job. But I do like, just a very long-winded answer to your question, I do like the fact that he's got principles he's willing to stick by him, but I wonder whether the principles themselves are slightly, they could just do a little bit of a redraft or an edit, just to sort of say, 3-4-3. This is how I play. But wait a minute, I've also got 4-4-1 or 7-12-29 in my locker if I need to, because I think he's backed himself into a bit of corner, which is needless, and that to me is naive.
Yeah, it is a sense of naivety that's there, and the stubbornness could be the end of him, but it does lead me back to those barren years at the late 80s when Sir Alex came in, and he was pretty stubborn in his own ways, and he rode that roller coaster, and 100%. Ultimately he came out the other end. I'm not saying that Ruben Amorim is going to replicate what Sir Alex has done, but it's certainly interesting. And we know that United now are set to have this team briefing that's coming up next week, I believe the 24th of February, in informing employees of this various reports regarding the further staff cutting measures, inevitable discontent that comes with such. I've been advised by individuals close to the club that there is a small contingent of that first team squad feeling disenchanted with the current predicament in the Northwest, some of whom were also feeling similarly aggrieved during Ten Hag's reign. God forbid I attempt to share this information online to highlight Roy Keane's sentiment about leopards in their spots. It's easy to see why somebody would be disenchanted. When things aren't going well, if you and I were unhappy at work, it would be a sense of disenchantment. So it's not necessarily the be all and the end all. This happens in life.
Yes.
But one topic that I'd love to elaborate on is the report that you brought to light regarding the scouting departments and how United's 80 or so are facing a considerable cut as part of this streamlining process. I mean, this centralizes around the idea of utilizing the data-driven assessment, and this is where I really geek out on this sort of stuff. But with Christopher Vivell to be appointed permanently to head up recruitment, it comes at a time when the club have released second quarter financial results showing total revenue down 12% from the prior year. There are massive benefits in utilizing data. One of the more modern examples was the background analysis on Gareth Bale being converted from a fullback to an attacker, and the highly notable US Moneyball scenario in that baseball. But what can you tell us about this entire process from here, Jamie?
Well, I think, on the one hand, you do this report and, you dig into it and it goes out and you'll get responses. Well, the scouting department's not really done very well in recent years. So, I'm generalizing a little bit, but basically, it's great that some people are being sacked and all the rest of it. I'm a little bit surprised that, this seems like such a large number, because that says to me, well, what I'm being told is kind of what you said then about the data. So it's going to be more data driven. And I get that. But I think there's something about having eyes, a pair of human eyes on a player, whether it's a youth player or whatever, just get a feel for them in the flesh, when they play, etc., etc. Again, it feeds into this lack of money. I mean, you mentioned there about the revenues being down. They've lost £300 million the last 3 years, as we all know. The debt costs about 20 odd million to service. These latest figures that have come out include the sort of £4 million accounts, a £4 million payment to Ashworth. A lot of money is going literally down the drain, right? It's going on nothing. So if you're a scout, you might be looking at it and thinking, wait a minute, I'm actually, I'm actually sort of doing something here that's for the football team. In other areas of the club, i.e. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, you sack Ten Hag in October and all his staff, it's 10 million. You employ Amorim on top of that to bring him in. The total cost of those two things, Ten Hag out, Amorim is 20 odd million. Then, Ashworth, that's the price of basically Dorgu, who looks quite a good player, 30 million, whatever. And then you're sacking all these people, scouts. It's part of the overall redundancy drive. What I'm told about it, just with the scouts and also this latest round of cuts, people's jobs, they are confident, this is Ineos, that within 2 years, all this pain, if you like, that they're going through, people's livelihoods, misery really for families, etc., and all the rest of it, in 2 years' time, they'll have, I'm paraphrasing, but basically a competitive edge over elite rivals, allowing them to service the first team in terms of transfers. So, listen, we're all human beings. If in 2 years' time this comes to fruition and United are like, champions again, it's a little bit like we talk about Amorim. People look back and say, fair play to Ratcliffe. It wasn't great. We doubted him. He definitely made some mistakes, but look at what's happened. Now, one thing I hear a lot, and I think it's true, is why he doesn't just sit down, right, Ratcliffe, doesn't even have to be people like me, but just with the club and say, you know what, we've made some mistakes. Ten Hag, Ashworth, it's unpleasant, all these cuts. The scouting department, it's a shame, we've had to get rid of so many. We've made mistakes, but, trust me, I'm doing it for the right reasons, just bear with me. I think that would help. That's what I hear a lot. But it's just it's the way in which it's coming out. That story I did about the scouts, for example, it's kind of my job, but basically that was, and I know this for a fact because of what I'm told, that was the first the scouting department heard about these cuts. Obviously, they might have had an idea that if there's going to be redundancies, then our scouting department or me as a scout might be in danger. But that report by me was the first they heard. And why don't I bring that up? Because again, it shows the dodgy or faulty, dysfunctional communication internally, right? They should be the first to know, look, here's a note. Potentially your job could be, it should be reading it in a newspaper, right? So that's just an example of the dysfunctional kind of PR, if you like, or communication really is the word. That's where it's at with the scouts. It has to be done, it seems. Me as a person who's got half a brain, I like to think, cannot believe Ratcliffe is not doing any of this unless he genuinely is doing it for the right reason because he thinks he can sort United out. Because, the guy is 72. I read somewhere he's worth 29 billion. Even if that was 10 billion out, right, he's still a very rich man. He can't be doing this because he needs to make a few quid. I think, so I'd like to believe he's doing it because he wants to actually have something tangible. Say, look, I sorted Manchester United out. So therefore, if that is all true, what I like to believe, then you'd like to think that will take him through. Because if people do stuff in life for the right reason, I like to think if they stick at it, they'll get there in the end. So, let's give him the benefit of doubt. Let's support him. But for crumb's sake, Sir Jim, sit down and have a chat so that the fans, who are the most important people, and the players, but the fans, the ones who turn up all the time and, kind of their lives are made misery or not if the team doesn't do well, just let them know exactly what's going on.
The very fact that I mentioned the disenchantment that has been fed back to me from individuals close to the club,
yes.
How is it not even remotely feasible if you're telling me that scouts are finding out from your report? Money is money, and I know the super rich live in an entirely different world to the working class individual like the both of us and like all of these staff that are unfortunately losing their jobs at the club. But there's a human way you can go about it, and you can treat people with civility and respect. You've been reporting on the club for quite some time.
Yeah.
And you've seen what I can only categorize as the complete mismanagement of let alone a football club, but anything that the Glazers have underseen in close to 2 decades. With what you see with Ineos, you make a very good point, because I've been taking pelters in the neck for the better part of a week because I'm trying to get this out across my own platforms. From information I'm getting and from what I'm reading from SEC filings, it just doesn't make sense that Radcliffe would go to all of the hassle and the lengths that he is doing unless there is a bigger picture at play here. We're looking at a man that spent over $1 billion knowing he's not getting a return on his investment. You look at 50 million gone into Carrington to make it one of the most elite grounds in English football. You look at fundamentally how he can sit down with the fan advisory board and have robust conversations to try to address some of the concerns that are occurring. Do you view this that there is a bigger picture at play here, Jamie? Or am I just trying to be too romantic surely Sir Jim can see a pathway towards the possibility of majority ownership at some stage in this?
Yeah, well, you raise an interesting point there towards the end, because he's already the largest sort of single minority shareholder. So I think there is some credence in him working towards that. And the bigger picture is, a part of that, him becoming the sort of basically the owner. Part of that is what I just said about the time frame, that the sort of 2 years time, United will be back as United fans would like to see United. There's this thing about winning the 21st title on the club's 150th anniversary, which I think is in 2 years' time. So they've stuck the neck out, or he stuck his neck out a little bit there, because what'll happen if United is still a disaster or not even close to getting this 21st title, that'll come back to sort of haunt him. It's kind of what you just said there. I can't believe he would waste his time, if you like. Not waste his time, that sounds wrong. But what I mean is he wouldn't be doing. I can't believe he's doing this for the wrong reason. Because why would he bother? I don't think that's him at all. I'm not saying he's perfect or any of that. But you mentioned there a key constituency who really, and I know it's old news, but it's still new news. It's the Glazers, really. What we're seeing here, what we're seeing in this 15th position, the Amorim thing. Paul Pogba coming in for a British record transfer and it not working. Angel Di Maria 2 or 3 years before. All the sort of missteps in the transfer market. The billion plus, might even be 2 billion now. Spencer's, Ferguson, all going wrong in the transfer market, more or less. It's because of the Glazers' mismanagement, and it's just a general sort of year-on-year wearing down of the club. And now 20 years on, after 20 years since Malcolm Glazer bought in with his ridiculously leveraged buyout of the club, we're now seeing kind of sadly the sour, bleak, very, very sad fruits of that. And so again, in this light, hopefully Ratcliffe, is going to be the one to turn this around, because someone needs to. It's a great institution. It's an amazing football club. I think, United will always be able to rise again. And I think, an indicator of that is, what I mentioned a couple of times now. Arsenal would kill for 2 trophies, right, in the last 2 seasons, wouldn't they? Yeah, but that's considered not good enough for United, which is great. That is United. That's how, that's where they are. But, that, in a way, that shows us, what I'm saying is that shows the strength of United. Even when you're being kicked in the whatsits consistently over a number of years, you still somehow get a cup here, a cup there, manage to attract Europe's sort of rising star coach in Amorim. It's brilliant, yeah? And that's actually one thing Ratcliffe has got right, by the way. We should highlight that. He's got Amorim in. And I know I've been saying he should do better, but, I still think it was amazing that they got him, and he can do better. And so that is a massive feather in Ratcliffe and, the club's cap. But yeah, the Glazers, what can you say? I mean, the debt now is £250 million more than it was when Malcolm Glazer bought the club. And obviously, with inflation, it's probably more than that 250. It's just ridiculous. It's gone up by 50% essentially since he came in. So, yeah, I mean, it really is at their door. Years and years of dysfunction and mismanagement. And Ratcliffe now is taking the flak because he's doing this. It sounds a little bit like I'm a Ratcliffe apologist. I'm just trying to balance out, because, he's been in basically a year. The Glazers have been in 19 before that, right? So it's obvious whose fault this is.
Absolutely. And all the while, these individuals are many, many miles away, laughing in their ivory towers while it's all playing out in front of us. And
yes,
I think that'll bring us along nicely to kind of projecting what a summer window is going to look like, because despite the vast wealth of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, PSR, FFP, dictating limited finances available and the ability to significantly strengthen this squad is reliant truly on player sales. We see the likes of Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford and Anthony all on loan, and the trio have clauses which can aid in bolstering this potential transfer kitty. Notably, any departure of Rashford will obviously return pure profit, as was the case with Scott McTominay and any other academy prospect who may depart the club. Then you look internally at the likes of Victor Lindelof, Christian Eriksen, Casemiro. Smaller transfer fees likely, if any, but the 3 players earn in excess of around £620,000 per week in wages. The latter has obviously revealed his happiness in Manchester, but I know the club are extremely keen to wave goodbye Now, transfer guru Fabrizio Romano has stated that he guarantees the club covers several positions in the summer. Now, there must be some drastic plans with our new Chief Business Officer, Mark Armstrong, to generate untold wealth and spending capacity here. Given everything that we have discussed and the lack of money and the record losses, what's your take on potential incomings and outgoings come the summertime, Jimmy?
Yeah, listen, I know Fabrizio quite well, and I think you're right to say transfer guru. He is an absolute whiz. You know, he knows what's going on. I am a little surprised he's saying that. I don't know exactly what he's saying, but they definitely do need lots of different positions. But the money at the moment might be sort of less than zero what they've got. So what you just said then about wheeling and dealing, and you're correct. I mean, Casemiro, as I understand it, it might be even more. It's about 360 a week he gets, rather than 300. Rashford's about 365. So yeah, that will save them a lot of money. So I don't think I don't know. I mean, Casemiro doesn't sound to me like he's going anywhere. So the one thing that was told to me where they could get some money, right? When he put his $300 million in, I think this is Ratcliffe. I think there's like a credit facility of £150 million that they took out. I think what he could do, Ratcliffe, is he could pay that off, right, and then take it out again to generate £150 million. That's what I'm told in money. I need to check that with the club, but I was told that by someone who knows the sort of figures. So, even if that is not possible, that's a way of explaining or outlining how kind of desperate it is at the moment for money. As I said, I'm told they've got basically zero at the moment, and watch this space with regard to what they're going to do. So when I sort of see, they're after this player for sort of 60 million or whatever, I'm thinking, yeah, I get it. You're going to have to try and put potential deals in place in case. But at the moment, I mean, Rashford, it's a £40 million thing, I think, to Villa. There's no guarantees Villa will want him, by the way, but they may well do. £40 million is a good start, but it's not. What is it? It's like, the legs of an elite striker. If you feel like that's the position that needs to be serviced first, I'd be surprised if they get one marquee, like one signing in the summer that you think, wow, what a player he is, well done. Just because I don't think they're going to have that sort of cash.
I think it's laughable when you start seeing these reports saying Manchester United are breaking ground on £75 million player, and you're thinking, yes, where is the money coming from? What I was referencing with Fabrizio Romano, I'm after getting the quote here just as we're speaking. After deciding not to invest money in January due to FFP, I can guarantee that in the summer, the idea is to do many things. They will cover several positions. Also, in terms of outgoings, many players are expected to leave. In general, Man United will change a lot in terms of players. It is going to be a busy summer.
Right. Well, I'm not going to argue with him, that's for sure. One thing I would say, though, is they didn't do nothing in January. They spent 25 on Dorgu, and that was about it, really. But listen, if he's saying that, then fair enough. But I think the outgoings thing there is interesting. I'm sure the idea is to do loads, but I've been told by people at the club, ranking people at the club, that I was told it's going to be tight in the summer, and that to me is basically, look, we are on our bottoms here, our backsides. It's put down the back of the Old Trafford sofa for like a £5 to see if we can chuck it in the transfer key sort of thing. I'm exaggerating, but you understand what I mean.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's great to have an ideal to be able to pull together lots of players, but even an individual who wouldn't be totally au fait on what was going on can look at these record losses. And, it's now rumoured that the club could offer Paul Pogba a short-term contract on strict terms as he's aiming to get back into competitive action. I can't imagine any sort of a partnership with Pogba and Amorim returning the best of outcomes. But another ex-player that's also approaching the end of his deal is Angel Gomez, and he's flirted with the prospect of a return to his boyhood club. We're told he would welcome a return despite the issues, and given the availability and the lack of requirements for a transfer fee, that is the sort of deal that I think the club will probably pursue, and it's something that they certainly should, because if you can look at getting a real quality player who's at the end of their deal into the football club, then that alleviates half of the problem. And, you can negotiate with the player in terms of contractual status.
Yes.
Now, Jamie, given all the trauma and the weekly anguish amongst the fan base, we can only hope that Mr. David Moyes is going to do us a favour at the weekend. Yeah? I mean, credit where it is due. Credit where it's due. Look, in fairness, he was brought back to Everton to deploy a brand of simplistic football and preserve their Premier League status, and he's excelled emphatically. This short trip is going to be anything but easy for United when considering the fortunes of both sides. How do you see that playing out?
Well, first of all, I can't wait to watch it because I'm not doing that game because it's the way I'll be doing City's game on the Sunday. I think it's Liverpool or Arsenal. Anyway, wow. Right. Quick rewind. I was at the game when Moyes' United played at Everton. And I don't know if you remember this. You're obviously a lot younger than me, so you might not do. But 2014. And there's Paddy Power put a Grim Reaper in the crowd. Yes. Because it looked like Moyes was going to get sacked as United manager. Well, how about it turning around in 11 years since? And I'm not saying Amorim's going to be sacked, but, Moyes has sort of shown that his character, his fibre, he got sacked for 34 games at United, Premier League games anyway. And look at what he's done since. Fair play to the gentleman. And I just think this has got... Listen, I could see this United team turning up and getting a result, right? They are up and down. They went to Liverpool, got a great draw. I know it was penalties, but they still beat Arsenal on their patch in the FA Cup. I can see it happening, but, as let's say, a 25% chance. But I can see them losing. But also, Shaun, I hate to say it, I can see them being at all sixes and sevens. I thought Neville had his analysis spot on at that Spurs game. He got a lot of hassle online about, you're anti-United, what you got against Amorim. But that thing where Casemiro and Fernandes were like miles apart, it's just like an ocean of space. That's not great. And I can see that happening again at Everton. And I don't want to sort of be horrible or pessimistic, but, a couple going quick for Everton, and suddenly you're looking at a 4 or 5-0 hounding there. So a draw would be a great result. A win would be like, dreamland. But I think even a sort of, I know I shouldn't say this about Manchester United, it's just where the club is at. Even a sort of respectable loss, if you can have one of those, would be, right, okay. I mean, I don't know what you think about it, but I just, that crowd, I don't know if you've been to a Goodness Park, that is a proper football crowd there. They will get after their team, but they'll also get after United, you know what I mean? And let them know where they are.
Yeah, I've been there. I've done most of the away grounds, and I'm going to take the much younger than you compliment about 2014. My first game, ironically, was when Pete Molyneux held up that banner about Fergie against Crystal Palace.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, no. Goodison Park is tough, and they're flying high at the moment. And I know David Moyes will be very, very eager to get one over as well. But all being said, and as Jekyll and Hyde as that performance was against Spurs, United could and probably should have left there with 3 points in another day.
Garnacho could finish, Shaun. Do you know what I mean?
That miss really, really highlights just where his confidence level is at the moment. It's shocking that would occur, because a confident footballer, regardless of a Garnacho, like a confident Harry Maguire, would put that in the back of the net. There was one fantastic question that came through, and I'm going to put it to you very quickly. Christopher Engels is his name, and he sent this through. He said, "Hey, Jamie, I'm a long-term admirer of your work, and it's fantastic to see you linking up with Shaun. I've spent many years protesting against the Glazer family, and I was part of the group that was immediately vocal about the potential damage and harm they would inflict on the football club from day one. We anticipated trouble, and we expected disappointment, but the magnitude at which it had occurred has exceeded what some of us considered possible for the most beloved club in the world." He's asking you, as a man who has covered Manchester United as long as you have, did you ever envisage a time where the club would be in such peril?
I mean, first of all, I'm not a United fan. I'm Notts Forest, but my son Sonny is a massive United fan. He's 13, so all he's really known is this sort of like decline. And he already has a sort of gallows humour about his own team, but he loves that. He's been to see him loads of times. And the reason why I say that is I do have a bit of a feeling. I'm actually, my wife is a United fan. Her dad, George Best. You can remember going to see George Best. He's proper. All the rest of it. So I'm sort of steeped in the club in that way, as well as the job. And I have to say, you know what? There was some seasons, maybe under Solskjaer or Mourinho, probably all of them, where I'd come away from a lot against being crumbs. United have kind of got away with that a little bit. They've got a win, and so I always felt like there was a little bit of a sort of dicing with kind of disaster. But I've got to be honest, I didn't quite think it would get to a stage where, this PSR thing was really kind of, well, let's say concentrated the decline and the disrepair, neglect under the Glazers, the debt base. I mean, the debt is just, I'm not a fan of the club, so I can only imagine how absolutely galling it is to see this go on year after year. It's horrible. It's whether you're a United fan or not. Manchester United are like the royal family. I don't know. They're like show business. They're like an institution in our country. Everyone cares about, and that shows how big the place is. And it's a beautiful club. The people in there are lovely. It is. It really embodies the idea of club, as in, it's like a family. You go there. The people I see, I'm talking about here, in the press room, they're really just normal people like anyone else, and they love the club as well. So it's horrible to see all this. But to answer the question succinctly, I didn't think it'd get quite this bad, where I can actually say without being laughed out of town, well, if that gap to the relegation zone gets another 3 points to make it 9, then you can start to wonder why they're dicing with relegation here. I shouldn't be able to say that without it sounding ridiculous, but that is the state we're in. So to go back to Amorim, I really hope he sorts out. He's a brave cookie, and imagine if he cracks it. He'll be a folk hero for the rest of his life and beyond, sort of thing, and he deserves it. So I admire the guy's bravery, and that's why I really want him to do well. But I can't. It is surreal. It's the way it is now. It is surreal how far this club has fallen. 15th. It's Manchester United. It's not like my team, Forest, which they're doing all right this season. They're probably very fluky, but generally, they're not great. So. But what I would say is it will rise again. What was the team in Italy that went down the league? Was it Inter or Milan? Rangers did it in Scotland. If you are a proper club in your own country and actually globally, listen, I'm lucky enough. I've done loads of tours, summer tours, and it's going to sound a bit cheesy, but I can imagine what Beatlemania was like for the Beatles, because you go to like Japan, you go to LA, and United are known. Yeah, the team hotel is mobbed by fans, Beverly Hills, wherever it is. You go there to sort of do a player interview, because obviously, the Guardian can't afford to put me in the same place as a team. And the security, it's a proper big deal, and that's why it's such a shame. But also why, it will rise again. It's too big, too glamorous, too exciting, and too sort of just interesting. Not too, but at the moment. There's that line, the darkest point is before the dawn. Hopefully, this is it now. This latest round of redundancy, the slashing of the scouts, all the rest of it, the 15th position, Amorim trying to sort out his 3-4-3, the ridiculously bad luck with injuries. All this will be the darkest point before the dawn. But I go back to everything we're describing here is a product of what the Glazers have done or actually haven't done with the club, which is a shame, because they had a chance, actually. If they'd actually been if they actually half cared about the club, then we'd be talking about what a last 20 years this was. Wow, 5 Champions League, maybe, a pot for more Premier Leagues. Think about how it could have been if they'd actually done it, put a bit of love into the club, but that hasn't happened, and that's very sad.
It is about as sad as I can get across, and a similar thing to yourself. I was only speaking about this last week. My son turns 19 in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And I have effectively brainwashed him, so he's read through and through. But he is in the minority, he's in the minority amongst his friends and amongst all of that group, because Manchester United are no longer the allure that they once were for the younger generation. And all he has known is Glazer harm and mismanagement. And I hope for his sake. Like, it's funny because you referenced the 2 trophies and how Arsenal would have given anything for them. During what has been deemed as the greatest Liverpool team of all time, United have won the same amount of trophies, albeit they're not maybe holding the same allure as some of the trophies Liverpool have won, but United have still collected ample silverware. Now, finally, at this stage, I generally probe about upcoming plans for my guests. But we are all aware of your news, sir, the impending arrival of your upcoming novel, Adventures in Love. And for those unaware, what can we expect and where can we get our hands on this masterpiece?
Okay, so you can pre-order it now through the publisher's website. The publisher's called Northodox. Adventures in Love, right? We've all been young. Yeah, I certainly was once. We've all been teenagers. We've all had a sense of adventure. We've all been to, well, maybe not all of us, but we've all been to parties that went on all night. And we all maybe have dreamed of escaping to Ibiza to live there for the rest of life. And that's basically what Adventures in Love is about. It's a novel. It's set in 1990, so the height of the acid house sort of thing, which I was lucky enough to be a teenager during, sort of 17, 18. The last ever warehouse party at a place in Gildersham, and they plot, Joey and Nancy, these sort of 2 17-year-olds plot, they find out who is the sort of local Mr. Ecstasy supplier for their area, where they're from, Lancaster. They steal 1,000 of these ecstasy pills, pink New Yorkers, from this person, and they go to this rave that I mentioned, this acid house party in Gildersham near Leeds, and they're going to sell all the pills and on the winnings escape to Ibiza and live the life, the rest of life. But of course, people are onto what they're onto, and that's basically the story.
That sounds absolutely brilliant. And obviously, for anyone listening who is going to want to get their hands on that, I'm going to make sure and I put the link in the bio for the podcast. And it's going to be available across wherever you're listening, on Spotify, Apple. The link will be there. It'll be accessible. Jamie, on the very, very rare chance that someone is not up to speed with what you do on your socials, or if they wanted to speak to you more on the socials, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so basically on Twitter and Instagram, it's the same handle or names. It's Jamie Jackson, then 3 underscores. And then on Blue Sky, just look me up. I can't remember. It's Jamie.Jackson at Blue Sky, whatever the rest of it is. It's .co.uk. Yeah, listen. You're allowed to disagree with anything I say. Bring it on, but don't be nasty. I'm not saying any of your listeners will be, but that's my only rule, really. If you're nasty, yeah, then I don't think anyone should have to put. But I love to hear from people. So tell me, educate me about my sort of maybe probably. Lack of wisdom views on football. Yeah, I need to be educated, please.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. He's welcoming education, and we have plenty of that to provide. Jamie, my friend, it was an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. I do thank you for your time. And for those still here, please hit like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Drop us a review if you'd be as kind. If it's on Spotify, I have checked this. It literally takes 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and it would mean the world to me. You can keep up to date with all of our info and our news at theatre_of_red across all socials, and daily articles, club exclusives at our official Theatre of Red website. We'll be back next week to dissect Everton and the 3 points that we hopefully leave with. Until then, stay safe, enjoy your weekend, and up the Reds.